President Xi talks about unification, and they've never ruled out unification by force. And you only have to look at the last few years when there's been military drills taking place in the Taiwan Straits. In the last week, there's been a number of balloons coming across the water from China. So the threat is always there, and therefore it's in the back of people's minds all the time. And particularly when it comes to election, you ask people, young or old, and you say, what's the main thing for you? What are you voting based on? And it's always China.
Good morning. Now, people in Taiwan have started voting in an election which will determine the island's future ties with China. Adam Hancock is a journalist in Taipei. He's with us now. Morning, Adam.
Good morning.
So voting is underway. Just give us a sense of how enthused people are about this election.
Well, I think they're very infused for democracy, full stop. You go down to the polling station. I've been outside a polling station all morning here, and people are very happy. They're smiling, they're waving, they're putting their thumbs up. I was covering down at one of the polling stations nearby where I'm staying, and people were coming over and thanking me for being there, being part of the media. So it gives some indication of how into elections and how keen on their democracy people here are. I think this particular election, it's maybe not been as big as some in recent years. There was 8 years ago when the current president got into power. There was lots of concerns over China and what was happening with Hong Kong, and that resulted in a landslide victory for the ruling DPP party. I think this time a little bit quieter, but that doesn't mean it's quiet at all. I went to the final rally last night for the DPP, and it was at a stadium a little bit out of the center of Taipei, huge crowds. It was like being at a concert, effectively. Very, very noisy, queuing out the door. It was a struggle to get in. And it's the sort of stuff, we wouldn't see back in the UK, for example. This kind of mass rallies happening night after night. You walk down the streets here at election time, and the candidates are on the back of cars with loudspeakers going around the town. So it's very vibrant and very lively.
How much is this election being dominated by China and concerns about what it may do?
It's really always the key issue for voters here because of the continued threat of China. They've always claimed Taiwan as their own territory. President Xi talks about unification, and they've never ruled out unification by force. And you only have to look at the last few years when there's been military drills taking place in the Taiwan Straits. In the last week, there's been a number of balloons coming across the water from China. So the threat is always there, and therefore it's in the back of people's minds all the time. And particularly when it comes to election, you ask people, young or old, and you say, what's the main thing for you? What are you voting based on? And it's always China, or how the candidate will deal with China, or if they can protect Taiwan's national interest, national identity, and democracy. So it's not the only issue. Some younger voters are keen for other stuff like the high cost of housing in Taipei, the growing inequality, the lack of wage growth. They're definitely talking points, and I think talking points that younger people want to become more of an issue. But it's very hard to get away from the fact that a lot of this election is down to Taiwan's relations with China moving forward.
So tell us a little bit about the main candidates, the favourites in this election, and the differences between them.
Sure. So the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, their candidate is William Lai. He's the current vice president, so he's aiming to kind of step up and take the top job. He is not liked by China. They've called him a troublemaker and a separatist. And that's because of previous comments that he's made when he was a bit younger about Taiwan independence. He's dialed that back a lot during the campaign and during his time in more mainstream politics, really. And he says that he's going to continue with the status quo, with the approach that the outgoing president, Tsai Ing-wen, has taken when it comes to the cross-strait relationship. He's not the most charismatic guy, it must be added, but he's helped by his running partner, his vice presidential candidate. And this is kind of a theme in this election. The vice president candidates are actually a lot more entertaining and interesting characters than the actual main presidential candidates. And she was based over as a representative of Taiwan in the United States for a number of years. She's quite an interesting character. Again, Beijing don't like her either, but I think that's definitely helped Lai. In terms of the main opposition, Ho Yoshi is the candidate for the KMT, the Kuomintang party. They're the very traditional party here. They favor closer relations with China. He is the mayor of New Taipei City. Again, not the most charismatic candidate. He's helped a lot by his running mate, who is quite a famous TV show host, very outspoken on China. So again, he's sort of been helped by his other candidate on the ticket. And there is a bit of a wild card option as well from a smaller party called the Taiwan People's Party. He's called Ko In-je, and he is not your traditional Taiwanese politician. He comes out with some headline-grabbing quotes. He's done very well on social media. He's got a lot of young people backing him because he has tried to move the campaign away from talking about China and instead talking about issues that people care about. So I think it's unlikely that he will win it, but with the way the parliamentary system works here, his party could have a say if things are tight, which they are expected to be.
And do all the candidates have a similar approach to how to deal with China? Because they clearly don't want to antagonise, but they also need to assert that they believe that Taiwan should be independent.
Relatively similar, yeah. I mean, Lai, if he is successful, he has said he's going to continue to kind of toe the line that the current president has taken. I think probably Beijing won't react well if the DPP win. I imagine we'll see maybe more military drills taking place in the coming months as it moves into his inauguration period. But he's very much trying to frame himself as the candidate who is going to not rock the boat and just keep things as they are. The KMT leader, he's probably a little bit more, I would say, aware of the need to try and open relations with Beijing and keep dialogue open, something that hasn't been the case during the last 8 years. He's tried to frame Lai as somebody who is a troublemaker. They're trying to frame it as a decision between peace and war. If you want peace, you vote for the KMT because they will try and speak with China and keep things civil. Whereas if you want war, go for Lai because he's going to try and get Taiwanese independence. That's the way they've tried to frame it. And then Ko has sort of stood in the middle a little bit, saying he's happy to spend on military defenses and continue to communicate with the United States. But he also understands the need to have dialogue with China and not antagonize the situation further. So slight differences in all three of them, really.
Really interesting. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Adam.
Thank you.
Adam Hancock there, who's a journalist in Taipei. It's lovely to hear that so many people are out voting and they're waving and they're happy and they're enthused and engaged with the political process. It's always interesting, isn't it, when you look at other elections around the world. I can't believe if there is an election on the 14th of November or whatever it was that George Osborne said 14th, didn't
I think. Yeah, you're right.
Would people be out smiling in the kind of November cold and enthused with a general election here?
We'll all be knackered from the presidential election.
That's true.
That's going to be the problem, the US presidential election.